Hello. Whoever's out there, let me know if you can hear me. I haven't been having some mic issues. I did a live with somebody yesterday and the mic was fine. But then I just had my computer tell me that there's something wrong with the mic, so I don't know. And we're having some connection issues. I know in Florida somebody else just talked about it, that we're having some connection issues. So I don't know if it's my internet connection or if it's just YouTube or connections in general. Thank you, J-Ron. Appreciate it. So yeah, I think there's some connection issues. Oh, there you go. Because some of you guys are coming up in the chat, but your pictures don't come up. What I wanted to do tonight, I did a video with a friend of mine, a Zoom call with a friend of mine who's a mentor of mine, that was a coach of mine in college, for my Patreon site yesterday, and we got to talking about when he got the defensive coordinator job when I was a graduate assistant. Why they went to a 3-4, why they played reduction defense, how it all started. And, one of the things that we came across when we were talking about it was, the fact that at that level of football, which was Division III for a little while, and then it went 1AA non-scholarship, excuse me. At that level of football, what you found was you were building your defense around the types of players that you can get. And what was happening was, at that level of football, it's hard to find good 1 techniques and 3 techniques, and it's hard to find 4 D linemen, let alone 8 D linemen. And it was a lot easier to build upon finding those outside backers, those guys that, you could, maybe they were safeties in high school, but they were a little bit too slow, and you get them in the weight room and they get a little bit bigger, and you move them down to outside backers, and then you build kind of that weak side rush in, and then you really only have to find one kind of, you find a bigger nose, and then, 2 ends that you can get away with at that level of football, that don't have to be, 6'3", 290-pound kids. And then, you kind of build it from the back moving forward, and you take some kids that are good high school players, but maybe they're missing a little bit to be a scholarship player. So when you're at the small, college level or the non-scholarship level, you're kind of building your defense around the types of kids that you can get. And he's now an offensive coordinator in high school, and obviously I'm a head high school coach. And, in a roundabout way, what we kind of got to was, it's very similar in high school. You've got to kind of, you've got your defensive philosophy, your defensive thoughts, things you want to do, but at the same time, you've got personnel and things that you don't really choose, or you don't dictate. You don't have free agency, you don't have a draft, you're not signing kids. So, we just started talking about how odd front football was, convenient for small college and smaller college non-scholarship programs, and, how that kind of translates over to high school football. So what I thought we'd talk about live tonight was, what defense is best for us at our level of football. I've done them both. I've been an even front team, I've been an odd front team. So I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody that, I don't like even fronts, or I've never played even fronts, because I have. We were a 4-2-5 team for a couple of years and had some pretty good success and some really good seasons. And, but, just in having that conversation for the Patreon site yesterday with a guy who was a mentor to me growing up, he was my position coach in 1993. And then he was the offensive coordinator calling the plays my senior year in 94. And then I'm working kind of directly for him as the defensive coordinator. And, we started talking about 3-4 and why the 3-4 and why reduction defense and why quarter, half. And, in a roundabout way, after about an hour of the conversation, we kind of came to the point where we said, it probably fits us better in high school to be an odd front defense. And so tonight I figured we'd talk a little bit about, what you guys try to do on defense, what you want to do on defense, what you'd like to do on defense, and is that feasible at the program you're at? Can you do the things that you want to do, at the program that you're at? Because like we talked about, if you're an even front team, you need 4 D linemen, which means you probably need 8 D linemen. If you're an odd front team, you got to find 3 D linemen, and then hopefully you can find 6 D linemen. If you find 6 D linemen, then you're already too deep. And now if you're, I don't know about the programs you guys are at, but if you're at a place like the one I'm at, I can find outside backers. I can find safeties. I can find stack or inside backers. What I have a hard time finding are big physical athletic noses and big physical athletic ends. So when we go to the odd front, for us, it allows us to play some smaller kids, and then try to build around the kids we have to create more safeties, and then make those safeties from those JV kids that start as safeties. Maybe we try to move them down to backers when they get to varsity. Obviously, if you could have a kid play a position for 4 years in your program, and that would be the most conducive, because you teach him things on JV and then he just matriculates those things onto his varsity career. But at our place, a lot of times what we do is kids come in ninth grade and they've got a certain body type, and we're playing them at safety. And then by the time we get them lifting and doing some things, we move them up and they become backers. And then maybe some corners we had that were, good cover players and physical kids that get a little bit bigger, we move them to safety. And we take kids that aren't afraid to be physical that were corners, or maybe they were running backs, and we make them safeties. Hey, Coach O'Malley. And then, and then we take, some other kids maybe that don't have a position in the program, and we try to build our program moving forward that way. So in a roundabout way, this wasn't really what the conversation was about. The conversation was more about him being one of my mentors and odd front defense, and why, field under fronts and, weak side reduction defense, and, the game that you were seeing in the mid 90s and what we were trying to defend in the mid 90s, and why you would choose that kind of scheme as opposed to what you're trying to defend now. And then we got into a conversation about, would you, if I told you right now I've got a defensive coordinator spot, would you play that same field 3-4 structure? Would you still be an odd team? So I kind of figured, coming off that conversation yesterday, after rewatching it and listening to it, that we could talk tonight about defensive football and what you want to do and how you want to do it and what your philosophy is. And then, can you do it at your school? And if you can't, should you maybe look into some other things? We talked a lot. Joe Delgaze mentioned a lot about teaching young coaches and what young coaches, Joe's in his 50s now, and I'm going to be 48 in a month. And so, we started talking about educating young coaches and what young coaches need to, understand to become really good coordinators, and what you need to study, and how to study your weaknesses, and, how to study your deficiencies and turn them into possibly strengths. And, one of the things that we also stumbled across was most people get fixated on the things that they do really well, and that's all they want to dwell on or talk about. And they don't want to recognize where the weaknesses are. And, Joe brought up a great point. He said, you learn more when you get ripped, and when there's a flaw in your system and somebody, somebody takes advantage of that flaw, and then you have to go back and kind of redesign what you do and how you do it. And he talked about when 20 personnel started becoming a big thing in the mid 90s. Before 10 personnel shotgun quarterback runs were a big thing. 20 personnel, 3 wides, 2 backs was becoming a deal. And how, as a quarters team, you had to evolve into palms or 2 read. And then where the issues were with that, and what teams were doing to his, A shade 5 technique, Mike linebacker side, and then how he had to adjust the defense from there. And so, it's just a really good conversation, obviously, with somebody that I look up to, somebody that I went to when I was younger for advice. And then, after being in Florida for 15 years and being around top-notch college football, D1 football, and having access to a little bit easier access to things than he does on Long Island, all of a sudden now the roles kind of changed, and I'm starting to answer questions he has about the game of football in 2020 and offense. And he's running now the offense that, I kind of blended and morphed into my own offense a couple of years ago. And he uses my terminology, and he uses, my sets and formations, and he runs a lot of the same replays we do, a lot of the same RPOs, and then he wrinkles them because he's a good coach. He wrinkles them to fit his kids, but it's just funny how the world works and how coaching works. Those roles are now switched. Not to say that I'll ever be his mentor, but I'm now more of a mentor to him the way he was to me 20 years ago, just because I've been a head coach now, and he's been doing it on Long Island and back and forth between a couple schools, and you know, um, unfortunately, for whatever reason, people always want him to be an offensive coordinator, and he's a good offensive coach, and he was a coordinator in college. Not to say that he can't coach offense, but we had top 20 statistically, in NCAA statistics 2 or 3 years in a row. We had top 20 defenses, and it's all relative to who you're playing. Obviously, we were a non-scholarship team and a 1AA non-scholarship team. If we went, hey Tony, how you doing, bud? If we went and played Youngstown State or somebody like that, they'd score 100 on us. But with the teams in our conference, in our league, and the Georgetowns and the Duquesnes and the Ionas and the Canisiuses of the world, and Stony Brooks at that time, and schools like that, we were putting up top 20 numbers on defense with Joe as the defensive coordinator. And it always blew my mind that on I know it's 20 years removed. St. John's dropped football in early 2000s, but it's 18, 19 years removed. But I don't know why more people on Long Island don't recognize, especially older guys that know a little bit about the history of coaches and coaches on the island. I don't know why guys don't ask him to do defense. He could run a 3-4 defense in high school that would be simple and sound, and it would give other people fits because, I would guess on Long Island you probably see more 4-2-5 stuff and more even front stuff, and it was always amazing to me that people didn't recognize how good of a defensive coach he was. And I kind of owe my origins in defensive football to him. When I first became a head coach, we were dead. Everything that he was doing at St. John's, we were we were an underfront team, and we set it to the field and formation into the boundary. We were a cover 3 check team. We were a quarter half team, and just a lot of the things that he was doing with great success at St. John's, I took and basically took his playbook verbatim and started running that in 98, 99, 2000, 2001, and all the way probably up through 2007 or 8, where we made a change to go 4-2-5. So it's just interesting when you have conversations with people and you kind of go back and talk about why you did certain things or why you made certain choices. And I think as a coach, sometimes you've got to be able to ask yourself, everybody talks about what they do. And I think sometimes as a coach, you've got to ask yourself, or somebody else has to ask you and say, hey, have you ever thought about why do you do what you do? Do you do what you do because it's what you know? Do you do what you do, because you're confident in it? Do you do what you do because you believe in it? Can you teach what you do to other people? That's a big thing that we started talking about with high school players is, he brought up a great conversational piece. He said, look, I would give advice to guys all the time and said, if you could only play one front and one coverage that your kids knew how to play, you'd be better off doing that than you would be trying to get multiple with things that your kids can't do. So, sometimes when you have conversations with people that you've known your entire life, I've known Joe for 30 years, met him when I was 18-year-old freshman. He was the O-line coach. I was a receiver, so he was an offensive coach. So, right away we have more communication than I would with guys on the defensive staff. And then I end up being a GA. Yes, I coached Elliott Hulse, Tony. I didn't necessarily coach Elliott Hulse because I was on the offensive side of the ball as a GA. I was a receiver coach, and then I was quarterback coach. But yes, when I was a GA, Elliott Hulse was there. Amazing to see all the stuff he's doing with his strength training stuff. Elliott was a freak of nature. And while we're speaking of that, Tony, that's part of the 3-4 deal that we were talking about. Elliott would play the nose for us. And in college, he was physically gifted, but he was 5'7", or however tall he is. No knock on Elliott, but and he was probably 200 pounds, 200 something pounds. He was always strong. He was always a freak athlete. But Elliott was the type of nose that you could find to play in the 3-4 at that level of football, because you could get away with a 220-pound kid that was 5'7" that could command double teams, and centers were not going to block him by himself. I watched Elliott Hulse on a PAT. I watched him bust an A-gap and basically take the ball off the tee. Can't really call it a blocked PAT because he basically took the ball off the tee. He was back there so quick. But interesting, you bring up a kid like Elliott Hulse. That's what we were building the defense, um, you know, around kids like that were undersized. And Elliott was talented enough to play, probably one AA scholarship football, but he's 5'7", 210 pounds coming out of Baldwin High School. And so he ends up being a non-scholarship player and a great fit at St. John's. And we built the defense around kids like that were really good Long Island, inner city Queens, 5 boroughs type players. And we built some really good teams around that. And Joe built some really good defenses around players just like that. But that was part of the conversation piece that we were talking about, is how, why you would go 3-4, and then how you built your 3-4 around individuals like Elliott Hulse and Anthony Zito, that we made into a rush end, and that was a phenomenal player, and Stephen Diamikis, who ended up, being a strong safety for us, and a linebacker quarterback from Texas, Josiah Mooney, that became a really good Sam linebacker. And, we just built the defense around kids like that. And Joe's 3-4 scheme and his field reduction stuff, and then his movements and his pressures were just so good for what we were seeing at that time. But then the next thing we started talking about was how quickly the game changed to more 10 personnel and shotgun and zone read and quarterback runs, and, how that affects how you gap things out and your box looks and your coverages. And, because the game evolves and the game changes, and we have to evolve and change with the game. And, the thing that we kind of agreed on was odd front defense is still a really good way to go in today's game. He mentioned that with all the information out there right now, he would actually think about being a tight front team, and he would play with, a head up nose and 2-4 eyes, and he would play with, a 3-2 box with 2 overhangs, and he would push the ball wide and try and get it to those overhangs and those safeties, and he'd still try and be a quarter half team or a quarters-based toolbox team. So it's interesting, 20 years removed, if he got a chance to do defense, he'd still be an odd guy, but he'd probably be more of a tight front odd guy than he was a reduction front. And then we started talking about how, in a reduction front, how each side of the defense is different and how you coach a defense. We got to a conversation piece about the 5 technique, which in a 3-4 reduction defense, the 5 technique is set with the A shade on the strong side of the defense with the mic, and that's where the open B gap is. And the 3 technique is actually to the weak side, and it's weak side reduction. So the 3, the 5, and the will are on the weak side. And we started talking about how certain schemes, sprint draw and some read schemes that were happening back then, we started talking about how on the strong side with the open B gap, he started 2-gapping that defensive end, and the Mike would make a sub call to that defensive end and let him know that if you get any out blocks or reach blocks and your leverage is being threatened by the back, you can cross face and play the B gap, and the Mike will go over the top to play the C gap. And it helped them on some schemes. They were getting some sprint draw schemes and some other things. And the reason you can do that is if you have an open B gap defender, he can be a 2-gap player. But you now have to understand, or your D-line coach has to understand, that the open B gap side and the 3 technique, 5 technique reduction side are going to be coached 2 different ways, because you're not going to 2-gap the 5 technique to the 3 technique side, but you can 2-gap the 5 technique to the open B gap side. How does that translate to even front football? Well, normally in even front football, you're going to set the 3 technique where you want them, and you're going to set the 3 technique to the field of the boundary or to the back or anywhere else. And in the even front, you'd have the weak side would have the 1 and the 5, and that would be the will backer with them. But that 5 technique to the weak side can still 2-gap some things, and we did it when we were a 4-2-5 team, because he's got an open B gap, so he can, versus wide zone stretch outside run teams, he can kind of cross face and make the B gap an issue for that tackle, and now the Mike can run because you got an open B gap, so you can do things like that. But you got to understand how to coach it, and you got to understand how. Sorry, guys. You got to understand how each side is different, and you need, a good D-line coach that understands that, and you got to drill it and you got to rep it. So just a really good conversational piece with a great football coach and a mentor to me. We started off field cover 6, Coach O'Malley. When I took my first head coaching job, I was 26 years old, and obviously was a receiver in college and a GA on the offensive side of the ball. Had to do a lot of defensive work for Joe Delgaze because he was teaching. That's another thing we'll talk about in a minute, small school football and how guys were all the guys at St. John's that were coaching me were pretty much high school teachers that commuted to St. John's after work and got a supplement to be a college coach. We started playing field cover six and formation into the boundary. We were a 3 deep team, and it was all the stuff that, the same stuff that Joe taught you guys in 2000. And we loved how the nose in the end and the Sam and the Mike traveled, and the 3 and the 5 and the will, and the safeties could travel, and you had boundary players and field players in pods like you're talking about, and it was a great defense, and we had a lot of success at St. John's with it, and I had a lot of early success with it when I started at Ridgeview High School in '98. And what happened is the game evolved a little bit, and the game changed, and our personnel changed from year to year, and we ended up going to even front 4-2-5 stuff because I just felt it was easier to coach. I felt like the 3-4 had a lot of moving parts to it, and we had to be better coaches. And in high school, I don't know where you guys are at, what the issues are, but for me, getting a good staff and keeping them for more than 2 or 3 years, whether it be guys changing jobs, guys getting promoted and becoming coordinators, guys getting asked to be, coordinators or interviewing for head coaching jobs. It's very hard to keep a good staff for, at least in Florida where I'm at, it's hard to keep a good staff for long periods of time. And I felt like in a 3-4, you needed a consistent staff with a D-line guy and, maybe a guy that's doing outside backers, inside backers, and a secondary guy or a safeties and a corners coach. And you need to be able to roll that over 5 or 6 years in a row so you can really get good at all the adjustments that you need to make in a 3-4. And so we went to 4-2-5 for not only personnel reasons, but for coaching reasons. And I just felt like it was easier to do. And then we evolved back into a 3-3 stack team. Currently, right now, I'm a 3-3 stack team. And, me and Joe talked about the differences in the 3-3 stack and the 3-4. And we talked a little bit about run fits and how the run fits are different and how we choose to fit runs. But I think it's an interesting, especially in a setting on a YouTube live setting like this, I think it's an interesting conversation piece to talk about what you guys like to do on defense and how you would like to play defense. And is it conducive to your program? And if it's not, what should you do, or what do you need to do? Do you keep banging your head against the wall to run a scheme that doesn't fit your players because it's what you want to do? Or do you, as the adult and the coach, go out and get coached up and get knowledgeable where you learn something else because it fits your players? Yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't guess that 5 of 8 teams would be odd. I guess maybe with all the shotgun stuff and all the 10 personnel stuff and some empty stuff that everybody's maybe going to. Excuse me. A lot of spread stuff, a lot of air raid stuff. I think maybe the 3-4 is back in vogue again. We had talked about at that time when Joe was the coordinator that the Cowboys were winning Super Bowls with the 4-3, and Miami Hurricanes were winning a lot of games in a 4-3, and Florida State was winning a lot of games in a 4-3, and so many teams were dead set 4 hands in the ground. And we kind of joked about the fact that growing up in New York, there's not a lot of great college football, but we have NFL football. We have the Jets and the Giants, and we grew up in an area. Where at the time that we grew up, when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, the Giants had one of the best 3-4s ever put on the field with Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks and Carson and Reasons and Jim Burt and, just a bunch of really, really good players. And they were one of the best 3-4s to ever do it in the NFL. But everybody was still kind of 4-3-ish, because guys in New York, if they watch college football, they watch what's on TV. In Miami at that time, Miami and Florida State are going to be prevalent, and they're going to be on TV, and they're dead set 4 hands in the ground. And, so those conversational pieces about the game, the history of the game, where the game came from, where the game is going, how to educate young coaches on all those things. And, the one thing we got back to was we started talking about coaching, during this pandemic and what you can do with your players and what you can't do. And I know for us, the last 3 weeks, being able to be outside with our kids and doing a lot of conditioning and limited football work, it's amazing to me, especially with our younger kids, how bad we are technically and fundamentally. How poor we are at getting into stances, how poor we are at getting off the ball, how poor we are at running, simple hitch routes and slant routes and curl routes and corner routes. And it was just, we got on a conversation piece of, as coaches, sometimes we worry about techniques and fundamentals, are low on a priority. And for some reason, we all worry about schemes and clinics and what the next magic bullet face melter defense is. And I know for me during this Corona, time and being able to get back on the field the last 3 weeks with our kids, I'm just shocked, even with some of our returning players, because we missed spring football. I'm just shocked how poor they got in their techniques and fundamentals with things, and having to redo steps with O linemen and stances with O linemen and center snapping the ball and quarterback steps in the passing game, things that should be so simple in nature that everybody should be able to do because they don't take talent, and all of a sudden we can't do them. And then you start talking about your ninth grade kids coming in from junior high football and how crazy that is, that they've never really been taught how to run routes, and they've never really been taught how to block zone schemes or gap schemes, or they've always just been kind of taught to block somebody. So just a lot of really good conversational pieces that I thought would be good for YouTube Live. Odd front team because we felt really didn't have the players. Really bad season, playing a 3-4 and swapped. Yeah, I think a lot of times if you have a bad season and you make a change, the 4-3 is just so generic in nature, and I think it's easier for guys to learn and figure out, and less moving parts. And so a lot of times guys that get burnt on odd stuff, end up going back to 4-3 stuff. We play nothing but 3 safety defense, Robert, in our 3-3 stack. You'd have to tell me what you consider robber, because robber for me is completely different than what most people consider robber. We're a quarters-based team. Robber to me, when I learned it way back in the day, it's when Virginia Tech and Bud Foster were playing 8-man fronts with a robber safety, but the corners were more crazy half players than they were man on number one players. I'm a quarters guy, so to decide we're playing quarters, we're going to be man on one, except 5 and under. If it's 5 and under, we're going to zone it off and find work. And so so we can actually discuss what you want to discuss. I would just need to know what you consider robber coverage, because it's probably similar to what I consider quarters. But we play nothing but 3-3 stack, 3 safety defense. We play some of the Iowa State stuff. We play Tampa 2 that way. And we play some of the Iowa State stuff. The one thing we don't do is we don't, in our palms coverage, our 2-read coverage, our 3-by-1 adjustments, we don't play that guy as that Mike backer in coverage. But we play some of the Iowa State stuff, and it's one of the things I study probably right now, more prevalent than anything else that I study. But I've never got a chance to sit down. I had the D-line coach from Iowa State recruit our school this offseason, and I was able to talk to him a little bit, but he wasn't as comfortable talking about the back end of stuff. Some of the things we talked about made a lot of sense, but he wasn't as comfortable talking about the back end. But basically, in general, a lot of the stuff they do, that their 2 outside safeties are high a lot, and they're a 3-1 box team with, the tight front stuff and kind of hipped backers. And then when they play to the passing strength side, that free safety really becomes the Mike in coverage, and he becomes that 3 dropper. And we do not do that. It's a little bit too difficult for us at our level, I think. We're a traditional team where the free safety sets the strength, and the safety to the side of the free safety is down, and he's that swing deep a 3 player that 2 doesn't cross my face, 3 doesn't out leverage me guy, and then the free safety is on the hash. And then away from the free safety, that safety is a guy that can be up or down or up or back, however you want to look at it or talk about it. But we are nothing but 3 safety defense every day of the week. We do have some goal line heavier stuff that we use, but day one install, we are 3-3 stack. We are split field coverage. We are probably TCU, Gary Patterson style of coverage on defense, and how we set the free safety and how we call the coverages and how we play the read side and the away side. So we're a mixture of some Iowa State stuff, but I learned most of my split field stuff that I do now, I learned from a Nike clinic with Gary Patterson, and then studying TCU and how they do stuff. And then, like I said, we were a 4-2-5 team for 4 or 5 years before we went back to 3-3 stack stuff. So we took the 3-3 stack and we made that box replace the 4-2 box, and we played everything on the back end the same. So we're probably a little bit different than most 3-3 teams that you think about or look at. But now the college guys that are doing it, West Virginia a little bit back in the day, North Carolina State now, because the guy, Tony, can't think of his last name, but he's now at North Carolina State from West Virginia. He was at West Virginia with Rich Rod. And I think when Rich Rod was at Arizona, they tried to do some 3-3 stuff. And Nevada does some of it now, and but you're seeing 3-3 stuff with split field two high safeties more than I was never a fan of 3-3 stack one high. Um, I thought there was too much movement involved, and I thought that you were dead set playing either country cover three or rip Liz match and then man free. I thought we were only real options, and then I thought your outside backers were truly backer types, not safeties that could be on a hash mark unless you made nickel or dime substitutions. Um, and and so we went to more of the three safety structure from our 4-2-5, and we just took the 3-3 stack and replaced our 4-2 box with a 3-3 stack, and we fit our 3-3 stack is basically the fits are different than the 4-2, but it's the same theory and premise. We're going to fit C gap to C gap with those six, um, and 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 go from there. We play some 4-eye stuff, Coach O'Malley. We don't major in it. We actually we play 5-0-5. We don't play head up with our ends. We play our ends very similar to even front or 4-2-5 ends. We try to squeeze the hell out of down blocks. We try to spill. The only difference last year, I had a Division I defensive end, and with that Division I defensive end, I taught him to be a dent player, not a spill player, because he was a very good player and a good athlete, and I didn't want to waste him spilling. But on the other side, those kids did nothing but spill gap schemes and kick out schemes because I wanted, they weren't as physically talented as that kid, and I wanted to make sure the ball bounced where we wanted it to go. But I gave the D1, the kid that's at Liberty now, one of the best players I've ever coached, I gave him, and I taught him myself in the offseason how to dent and play things head up and beat those blocks to make plays so that he didn't waste himself. He was too good of a player to waste as a spill guy. So, and that's another very similar to the conversational piece that me and Joe Delgase had. I taught him differently than I taught the end on the other side. And I was fortunate enough when he was younger that I was coaching D-line. So I was able to do it because I was coaching the D-line. It's a little bit tougher if you've got to explain to your D-line coach, how you want to coach each side. And then when he drills it, it gets a little bit tougher. But when I had that kid when he was in 10th grade and he was younger and I knew how good of a player he was going to be in the offseason, I would take him in the summer or whenever we had a chance, and I'd work with him by himself and say, all right, look, here's how you're going to play it. And he was smart enough, and obviously he's going to play Division I football, and I think he may have a chance to be an NFL player. He's going to be a 4-eye. He would have been, if we could have done it, he would have been the best 4-eye possibly. He's now up to 285 pounds. He's 6 foot, 285 now. He played end for me, 5 technique for me, but no way he was going to be a 5 technique in college because he was too short. So Liberty does a lot of 3-4 stuff, and he's now an end for them in the 3-4 playing those 4-eyes, and he can reduce down to a 3 technique. He's, as a freshman right now, he's been at Liberty for a month with them, and he's 285 already. He left me at about 265. So, but I taught him differently because I was able to do so because I was a D-line coach. Which offense, bud, are you talking about? How do you use your defense combat wide, mid-zone? I've seen your videos, and I happen to love the scheme. Wide zone for us is going to be a deal that we got to set the edge with our secondary players based on the sets and the coverage that we're getting. And then, we're going to fit the blocks up front based on how we see them. So if we're getting reach schemes, our 5 technique is going to be expected to be a C-gap player and beat reach blocks, and our stack linebackers are going to plug B-gaps. The big thing with wide zone is you got to understand how to tempo the ball with your backers and some of your players. You can't overrun the wide zone because it's going to go back behind you more often than not. One of the things we will look at doing if we are good enough, and I like last year with this defensive end, I would have done it. If we knew we were going to play a stretch team, we would play head up, and anything that was a reach or an out block, we would then make ourselves a 4-eye, and our stack backers would go over the top to the C gap. So we would, dabble in some 2-gap techniques for stretch teams, because the one thing that wide zone guys hate is penetration. They hate when you get skinny underneath some of that stuff. So, sometimes they love seeing the teams that read and run, and because they know that when they reach you, that you are going to expand. So what they do, if they're wide zone teams and they're good with the ball going back under, what they do is they teach those guys on the 3rd step, if you can't get it reached, you're now going to take that backside hook it hand. They call it that. Alex Gibbs calls it that hook it hand, or you're going to take that backside hand and you're going to run them to the sideline. And and you are going to now expand with horizontal movement instead of um, vertical movement. And now the back is going to make his cuts off that. That's what makes wide zone so effective. So you got to be really good at setting an edge, and then you got to be really good at your backers tempoing the near hip of the football and not overrunning it. Um, yeah, we had a couple good years on offense at Orange Park. Had some really good players. Had a quarterback that really understood the RPO game for us and the read game for us, and then we had some dynamic skills and um, had some really good seasons. Did some really good things. Had some things that we struggled with, but in general, the offense has been okay. We're transitioning right now from a gap scheme to more of a inside zone, wide zone scheme, and we're transitioning from a 10 personnel, 20 personnel team to more of an 11 personnel team and trying to use tight ends. So, um, I'm no different than anybody else. I look at things that we don't do very well and I go out and try and find answers. So I hired a guy that used to be a head coach, and me and him had a lot of great chess matches together, coaching against each other. And he was on the market and wanted to coach. And, he's in the financial world now doing a really good job. And so I'm going to let him be the offensive coordinator because I felt like what we were doing, people were catching on to. And I felt like it was a lot easier to bring somebody else in to make a change than it was for me to change. And now I can just focus on defense and coach one side of the ball. So we're going to be a little bit different. But to answer your question, we've had some decent offenses and done some decent things at times, and we've done some bad things at times. You have a call for an eligible number receiver who looks like he's playing O tackle. You talking about unbalanced stuff, or are you talking about that's usually a film type deal where we got to talk to our free safety about, if you're getting guys that are at a tackle position eligible, we got to count them. And if it's, if he's there and we're going to set the strength that way and we treat it like a tight end and a flanker and we play quarters, or if he's there by himself and we're going to play some type of sky or cloud coverage, 8-man front defense. One of the things that we do with unbalanced stuff, I think that's kind of, it's not interesting. It's not new. But for whatever reason, a lot of people struggle with it is, we just declare the unbalanced side. We take the guard on the unbalanced side and we treat him like the center and we just bump the front. We call it knock, NOC, new offensive center. So, when our backers recognize 3 ineligibles when our backers recognize 3 ineligibles on the same side, guard, tackle, we knock the front and we move the front over so the nose actually lines up on that guard. You make that guard the center, and now that tight end that was at tackle, that side now has a 3-man surface. It's actually the center snapping the ball. All right. And he's the guard technically. And then the guard on that side is the tackle. And then the tight end on that side is the tight end. And that becomes the 3-man surface. And we play our coverages off of that. So when you're playing on balanced teams, if you haven't done it before, one thing you need to look at is knocking your front, declaring a new offensive center. And that's what we call it. We call NOC, new offensive center. And you just line your front up to the new offensive center. The only nuance that's tough, Pete, is your kids got to understand that the center is not the guy with the ball in his hand. It's actually the guard to the unbalanced side. So, Linksys, I don't know why you'd be asking, but, I will answer the question. We have some pretty good offensive players. We have 2 running backs that I absolutely love, and we have a sophomore offensive tackle that is an absolute dude. Definitely going to be one of my next Division I players. 6'3", 255 right now as an incoming sophomore. Played JV for us last year as a freshman. He just wasn't ready to play yet, but he's going to be a really good one. I got 2 backs. One of them may move, unfortunately, and I hope he doesn't because he is special. He's going to be a junior, and the other back's going to be a sophomore. So I think I've got 2 of the better backs, underclassmen in the area. So, yeah, we've got some good players. Can you run old school outside zone and mid zone stretch, or do you need to major in one or the other? What do you, Robert, what do you consider? Are you saying outside zone and the ball's going to the perimeter, pin and pull style, and we're hell bent for leather? Or are you talking about more of a wide zone read theory where, the ball can go back under? We're going to major in wide zone because of the backs we have, and then we're going to minor in inside zone and counter is probably what we're going to do, in my opinion. Unless we just can't get wide zone figured out, then we'll probably switch and major in inside zone. But I now today I believe that the wide zone play as a read play that tries to go to the perimeter but can go back underneath can be done in high school, and I think it can be taught. And we are going to be dead set going into the season on being a wide zone team. To go back and answer your question, though, I would, if you wanted to do that, I would carry outside zone as a pin and pull type deal, where we knew we were trying to out leverage people and put the ball out there, and then I would carry inside zone as a base inside zone scheme, a read scheme, an RPO scheme. Um, but that's what I would do if you're asking me. And what are your thoughts on 4-2-5 defense, which I know is basically a 4-4? Also, thoughts on cover three for this team. When we played 4-2-5, we played almost no three deep. I've never been a three deep guy on the defensive side of the ball. Three deep for us is a change up to close the middle of the field. We are not a three deep team by nature. So three deep for us is a change up to close the middle of the field. We will spin and play some quasi three deep stuff to some trip sets here or there, but we were a 4-2-5 team as a true 4-2-5. Now. When I say that personnel-wise, we're a 4-2-5 team, but if you come out with two backs, we're going to look like a 4-4 defense to most people because we're going to be an 8-man front, and we're going to play quarter half or palms on one side, and to the single we'll play some version of cover two with either a safety or a corner as the 8th man supporting the run. So it'll look like a 4-4, but in general, it's not a 4-4 defense. It's not one high. I've never been a one high guy. I'm a two high safety split field coverage guy. Yeah, Coach O'Malley. Dent basically means you would take off the down block, you would still get hands on and squeeze the tackle, but when that next block comes, you would take it basically straight through the screws and straight through the face mask, and you would try and defeat that block and make a play. So if the ball went inside, you would try and dent and crush that block physically and be allowed to then try and make a play if the ball were to go inside or outside. When you're denting, you are not hell bent on spilling and making the ball go outside, because we spill. We certainly do. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, but when you spill, you basically you give up one for one. With your ends, a lot of times they go in there and they spill, and you take away vertical seams, which is a great way to play defense. But at the same time, I think you give up one for one with that spill player, and when you get a really, really good one, I don't think you want to do that. So when I get really, really talented ones, we dent. When I have average high school players, we spill. I don't know if you'll see fall football in New York based on the people that I talk to. They might flip spring and fall sports. I don't know. I don't know if you'll see kids in school in New York. The funny thing about that is we talk about New York all the time, and now Florida in the last 2 weeks has become an epicenter of COVID. It's funny, when I check kids in for our workouts, one of the questions I have to ask them is, have you traveled to New York, New Jersey, or Connecticut in the last 3 weeks? And now within the last 3 weeks, we've become an epicenter for COVID. So why am I asking travel questions about New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, when we're an epicenter? You live in Jacksonville, Florida, which became an epicenter for COVID. It's kind of stupid. I think you'll see some sort of football in Texas. I believe it's too big. It's too important. I don't know if it'll be abbreviated schedules. I don't know if it'll be district games only, county games only, but I would think Texas will play football. I think we're going to play some sort of football in Florida, I believe, from what I'm being told. I don't know if it'll be a full season. I don't know if it'll be district games only. The scary part is the more of these big timers come out, when the Ivy League shut down, when Stanford drops 6 or 8 sports, when the Big Ten tells you they're playing conference games only, that's the scary part, because, if those people are doing it with millions of dollars on the line, how in the hell can we say that it's okay for a high school kid to play football? If Ohio State is going to play conference games only, and Harvard, Yale, and Cornell, and schools like that, or the Ivies, Brown, or if they're going to not play fall sports at all, how in the world, with all the money involved in those sports, can they shut down? But as high school teams, we all of a sudden say that it's okay to play football. Yeah, we want to play football. Yes, we want to go back to school normal. Yes, our governor and our political leaders in Florida are trying to push us to go back to a normal school setting. I just don't physically see how it's possible. And the one question that nobody can answer from me is, we shut down in the middle of March, and we ended up virtual school the rest of the year. We didn't have graduation. We didn't have spring football. Spring sports got canceled. Our numbers today are worse than they were in March, but yet we're going to return, and nobody can give me an answer on that. And anybody can do is pull up these statistics of the fatality rate based on age groups and all these other things. But the bottom line is, we shut down for numbers that were nowhere near the numbers we have now. And now we're going to go back, and nobody can answer that question. Whether they can or can't, or whether they do or don't, are two different things. But I'm just looking at it from a rationale of, you shut us down and made us stay home and made us do virtual school. My wife's she was a kindergarten teacher. She's now going to be a second grade teacher. I have a fifth grader. Last year I had a seventh grader and a fourth grader. And, I'm at home as a parent doing virtual school for PE, no spring football, and my kids are doing virtual school and my wife's doing virtual school. And the numbers we have now are worse than they were when you made us do virtual school, but yet we're going to go back full time. Nobody answers that question for me. So it's difficult. 425 TCU, two blue, or your style Robert Quarters, two read is considered a middle of the field open. Yeah, what TCU does most of the time would be considered two middle of the field open. Their two blue is basically kind of Palms or two read. They're more of a Robert team. We're more of a Quarters team. But generally speaking, that would, from an offensive standpoint, that would be considered middle of the field open, split field stuff. So. Yeah, Tony, that hybrid deal I think is more logical. 2 days of virtual, 2 days on campus, so you have no more than 800 or 900 kids on campus at a time, and 1 day full virtual. But I'm done trying to guess what we're going to do. I'm done trying to think about what we're going to do, because I just look at some things with limited rationale of what I know about what's going on, and I just don't understand how the hell we can go back to something that's worse now than it was when we stopped. Thank you, Robert, for watching. Hopefully I can continue to help in the future. Slowed down with some YouTube stuff during the coronavirus when everybody actually picked up their online stuff, because it was hard to do videos from home. And it's hard to keep coming up with when I don't have spring football and I don't have anything going on. It's hard to keep coming up with content for a YouTube site and a Patreon site, and I don't have film to show. I don't have anything new that we're trying. So, it'll amp back up when we start playing again and we start doing things. And but I appreciate you guys that watch and you guys that tune in are the reason that what I do is even remotely successful, and the ability that I have to teach people and the ability that you guys have had to learn from the videos I've done is simply because you tune in. So I'm indebted to you more than you're indebted to me, believe me. Kyler Werzer, I'm a 16-year-old kid from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. My passion is to coach football. I quit football this past season due to personal reasons with my weight. I reached out. Head football coach, he offered me a teaching program next year. I have a great passion over it. I'm not officially playing. What advice would you give me? I don't think playing has anything to do with you can still coach, and the fact that you're going to try and start coaching now, I think gives you a little bit of an edge. And, if you end up graduating and going to college, wherever you're at in college, see if you can volunteer for somebody, whether it's Pop Warner, middle school, JV, it doesn't matter. And then the only advice I'm going to give you, Kyle, is if you want to do this full time, if you get to a college program, maybe you can hook up and be a video guy or an equipment guy and hang around and be an office rat and let those guys know what you want to do in the future. And if you hook up with the right guy, maybe you can make it a college career. But if you're planning on being a high school coach, I highly suggest you get in the education field, and don't be a PE major. PE jobs are few and far between. In my experience in 22 years of doing this, try and be a social studies teacher or an ESC teacher. Those jobs are open all the time. PE jobs are never open. That's the best advice I could give you. Aside from the ability of running back, what goes into your decision to run zone scheme versus gap scheme? Same decision making things that I talk about on defense. I think gap schemes are easier to teach and run than zone schemes are. I think they're a little bit easier for the back to hit and read. I think zone schemes, when done right, are probably better. I think the horizontal displacement of zone schemes makes it a better play. I think when you're a gap team, you need vertical displacement. So you got to be good up front, and your double team's got to move people because you're not overtaking anything. You're really just trying to maul people at the point of attack. So it's a deal where I think gap schemes are easier to teach and they're easier to get good at. But I think in general, zone schemes are schematically, if you got really good backs that can, with good vision, that can jump cut, I think zone schemes allow you to play off the defense a little bit more than knocking, asses off the ball. So philosophically, gaps were easier to teach and easier to run, and we could still run RPOs and we could still run triple option off of gap schemes. But we chose gap schemes because they were easier to teach. Tony Bananas, always great, man. Enjoy. Be safe in New York. Hopefully you guys play football. Thank you, Willie, for listening again. Like I said, you guys don't know. You guys probably mean more to me than I mean to you guys, because without any of you, I'm just talking into a camera and nobody knows. The fact that there was a YouTube audience out there of coaches that wanted to learn, and then people that appreciated how I taught things or how I did things. You don't become a teacher without an audience. You don't become a teacher without people that are willing to learn. Otherwise, you're just somebody rambling into a camera. So, like I said, I'm forever grateful to the PlayFast community, more so than you guys would be to me for what I've taught you, because without you guys, there is no what I do. So thank you for everything you guys do for me. And believe me, you guys probably don't think so, but every time we do one of these, or every time I do a video and somebody comments something, you guys make me better as well, because there's times where you guys bring up a question and I have to go back and think about, hey, that was a pretty good question. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I need to do it different. So, don't ever think that I don't learn from you guys, because every time we do a live, or every time I do a video with comments and things like that, I learn as much from you guys as you do from me. You just don't get the feedback from me because you're not doing videos that I'm commenting on. This is the only segment where I can actually tell you guys that there's a lot of times coming from these live sessions that I learn things every time we do it. 12-year-old in Chicago, and your videos have shaped my entire way of coaching. The PlayFast way has taught me how to keep things simple. Yeah, that's what, it's interesting. The conversation I had with my mentor, Joe Delgaze, we talked about it. The name PlayFast actually came from a friend of mine on Long Island. And when I started doing YouTube videos and I had to come up with a name, he was a guy that I had clinic that he was coaching at my alma mater, Valley Stream Central on Long Island in Nassau County. And I had clinic their staff a couple times, and on my slides and on my tempo deals, everything was about, playing fast. And he just said one time, he said, Coach, why don't you call it play fast? Everything you do on offense is tempo. And at the time I had nothing else. And I said, you know what? I'm going to look and see if play fast football is out there, and nobody had it trademarked. And I went with it. And then eventually when I turned my papers into Sunbiz in Florida to get to get a name and a business name, it was out there and it worked. And the funny thing is, for me now as a coach and a YouTube personality, whatever you want to call it, I don't know what the hell you call it, PlayFast became way more than tempo. It actually became an ideology and a pedagogy of coaching. PlayFast for me now is not tempo. PlayFast is the ideology of keeping things simple and getting your kids to eliminate thinking by teaching them. And guys get confused all the time. When I say keep things simple, that doesn't mean that we don't do a lot. We do a lot. But the manner in which we do it and the manner in which we teach it, we keep simple, and we try to keep as much carryover as possible in our schemes. Okay, so for instance, I'll give you I'll segue into things that I believe in. So when we zone pressure on defense, I am not a Rip Liz match cover 3 team. We don't match carry deliver. In our defense, we match things out of our pattern match quarters based defense. So if we 5-man pressure and tried to play 3 under 3 deep, for me to teach match carry deliver principles to my kids, even though that's schematically or theoretically the best way to do it, and even though I know that that's the way you should do it, we don't teach match carry deliver. So to install match carry deliver on top of the pattern matches that we already do is too expensive for me. So in order for me to get carryover, what we do is we start with 6-man hot pressures, where we play 2 under 3 deep. Michigan State, Pat Narduzzi now at Pitt, and everybody in college does it now. But we send 6 and we play 2 underneath vision, what we call vision and break players, and we call them hot players, and we call the coverage hot coverage. And we start there so that those kids learn how to be hot players. And then when we go to 5-man pressures, even though I know it's backwards to probably start with 6 and go to 5, but when we go from 6-man pressure to 5-man pressure, if we want it to be 3 under 3 deep, instead of teaching match carry deliver, we teach it as a vision and break hot player. So now we have 3 hot players, not 2, but we use the same principles and the same techniques and fundamentals with all 3 players underneath. So now the carryover from my 6-man hot pressure to my 5-man 303 deep allows me to be multiple with my pressures but the carryover allows me to be simple with our kids. So the two outside hot droppers are the same, and now the middle guy just plays hot coverage like the outside guys do. Thank you, Coach Greenfield. Always a pleasure. But and now, so what ends up happening is the simplicity is I'm building carryover into the scheme so that I can do more things. The simplicity is not just saying we do one thing. The simplicity is building carryover into what you do. On the offensive side of the ball, we have our RPOs that we like to the single and our RPOs that we like to the twins. And then we just mix up how we block the 6 in the box, and the carryover in the RPO game for the quarterback is the same because we're still reading overhangs. Doesn't matter the run scheme that we're using. We're still reading overhangs. So there's carryover. So we can do a lot because of the simplicity in the teaching of the carryover, if that makes sense. I would think right now, Kyle, I highly recommend Twitter as one of the best sources for networking with coaches. Obviously, Instagram's out there, but I don't network through Instagram. I try to use Instagram for personal stuff and then some play fast football stuff. But my world is YouTube and Twitter. And it's been very good to me. Networking, it's been very good to me from a business standpoint. I'm able to now do a lot of marketing for companies and make myself some money through play fast football marketing because I've got a YouTube audience where I can market a company at the beginning. I know all you guys hate the 2-minute intro with all the companies, but I have to do it because that's how I make money. I don't. YouTube is a free site that I do, and I'm always going to do because that's how I got it. That's how PlayFast became popular. So I'm never going to lose the YouTube end, but I don't make a lot of money with YouTube. So my money that I make with 2 daughters and yada yada yada, by marketing for companies that can pay me, $150 a month, $200 a month, whatever it is, to market for them on Twitter and retweet things and do promotional things like I did today. Today I did with my hat company Dome that makes my hats. It's a Rydell hat that they made, and we're doing a T-shirt giveaway for a coach that came to my clinic that is doing a charity, doing some charity work for Equal Justice Initiative, talking about social equality and social justice, and we're doing a Twitter giveaway of 10 T-shirts that he's got these T-shirts made that say Coaches for Change. And I'm able to do things like that now on social media because I have a big following and I have people that are going to tune into the things that I have to say. So, I've now, from the business side, I'm now able to market and do things. So Twitter and YouTube have been my 2 best, Kyle, if that helps you out. With the virus and everything going on, what are you doing with football? I'm not sure if you answered this question already. Sorry if I'm being repetitive. No problem. If you jump in, you can't see what we talked about. We still don't know in Florida right now. They say we're going to be a go. They say everything's going to be normal. I don't see how. But as of right now, we're preparing our kids as if we're going to be a go on July 27th. If they back it up, then we'll just back up training. I have no idea what we're doing with school. The governor says schools will be open 5 days a week and we'll be back in school. I don't see how that's possible, but I'm not making those calls, so I'll just do what they tell me. Coach O'Malley just had a meeting with my partner that helps me with the clinic, and we just talked about it. The thing that we're up in the air about right now is booking a hotel. The 2 companies that we use, Dome, my headwear company, and then Baker Sports, who does all my spirit packs and things like that. They're 2 smaller local businesses. We don't know how bad they were affected by COVID. I don't know if they have the money to lay out to be sponsors like they did. We need to find a 3rd sponsor to take care of speakers rooms and other things. So we learned the hard way last year where a lot of our costs were coming from, and got out of the first year with a little bit of a profit, not much, but from a business end now, it's a venture that I obviously know that I can pull off. We want to do it at the same site. I was just at that site last week for my daughter's birthday. It's amazing, right on the ocean, beautiful pool, bar at the pool, 2-hour happy hour. The question is going to be, will people travel in January? I don't know. Can we get that hotel booked again? I don't know. Can we get that hotel booked with some type of COVID or Corona clause so that if nobody travels and we can't do this, or if travel bans are up again? The funny thing, Coach O'Malley, about that is Originally, we might have been worried about you coming from Long Island to a Play Fast clinic. Now I'd be worried about you coming into Florida. That's how much 360 it's flipped. Um, so hopefully there's no travel restrictions. Hopefully we can get the hotel, we can get the site with 5 or 6 months to promote it, and we 100% want to do a Play Fast clinic in 2021 because it went so well year one that I don't want to get derailed without a year two because we want to build upon what we did. We want to get a third business to sponsor. Um, we want somebody to become a sponsor for hotel rooms for speakers. And so, yes, there are plans for that clinic, but right now, Coach, I can't tell you if it's on or not. Recommend that I should ask Stu to network with coaches, specifically coming from my perspective. Be honest with you, Kyle, I probably wouldn't put forth when you're trying to network or talk to coaches about things. I don't think I'd throw out there that you're still a high school student. I would just throw out there that you're a volunteer Pop Warner coach or a volunteer middle school coach, or you volunteer at your high school and coach. Don't tell anybody that you're a high school student. I'm not telling you to lie to anybody. Just don't bring it up unless somebody asks, so that they treat you with, you know, coaching respect, and they answer the questions that you may have, and they don't treat you as a high school kid. Obviously, if they ask or it comes up, you tell the truth. You don't ever lie. You don't ever lie. But withholding certain information that doesn't need to be thrown out there is not really lying. So, I would, while you're networking and asking questions, Kyle, you can ask me any question you want. I'm not going to change my answers because you're a high school student or whatever. But I would just say, networking wise, if you're trying to meet up with coaches, I would keep your side of your situation as vague as possible and just make it like you're a coach that volunteers and helps out and you want to learn and you want to network. That's what I would do. Same advice I give everybody. You got to find a local program somewhere near you, wherever you're located, and you got to go to a coach and ask them if you can volunteer. You're welcome, Kyler. Ask them if you can volunteer and help. You've always loved football and you study football and you want to learn, and just understand that when you volunteer and help, you might start off as an equipment guy. You might start off as a guy that's videotaping practices. It doesn't matter. Get your foot in the door and work your way up the chain from there. Don't try to go somewhere and volunteer and talk about all the videos you've watched and you want to be a 4-2-5 team with split field coverage. And, don't start that way. Get to that later on, but go volunteer and do whatever they ask you to do. That's the best advice, LeBronca, that I can give you. I hope it helps. Let me go back to Brett, and then I'll get back to Jason. Port St. Charlotte area, and we're moving here. You know much about the high school teams around here? I do not, Brett. I'm sorry. I really only know about my area and where I'm at. I'm still a Northeast Long Island guy at heart. I don't know much about Southeastern football. We don't play a lot of those schools. I don't know much about the southern part of the state. I know they play great football down there. I could probably tell you who the perennial state champs are all the time, but in Port Charlotte itself, no, I do not know that area real well, Brett. I'm sorry. A lot of man free and cover zero last season. Cover three matches, very easy to teach my 12-year-olds. Wasn't perfect, but it worked in doses. What zone blitz can I add? Well, I would say if your 12-year-olds can play Rip Liz match 3 deep, then you've already kind of built in match, carry, deliver, and the reads off of number 2. And if 2 goes to the flat, you're going to match them. If 2 goes vertical, you're going to carry them. If 2 goes inside, you're going to deliver them to the 3 hole dropper. So I would think, hey Brett, if you ever send me a message of the exact high schools, I could probably just do a little bit of research and tell you, which ones theoretically or historically have been better. Getting back to Jason, if your 12-year-olds can understand Rip Liz pattern match, then when you go to zone blitz, just be 3 under 3 deep. You've already taught them match, carry, deliver. There's already a lot of principles and alignments that are similar. And then, that's what, if I was a Rip Liz match team, when we would go 3 under 3 deep and we would match, carry, deliver, that's what we would do. But we're not a Rip Liz match team, so I don't match, carry, deliver because I don't want to teach that. But if your kids already have an understanding of it, that's what I would do. But going backwards a second, Jason, still keep man free in the deal because I don't know at your level what you see, but I can tell you at our level, we have to five-man pressure with man free, and we have to be able to zone pressure because we have to defend a lot of RPOs, and man free is one of the best ways to defend those RPOs while still having a post player in the middle of the field and adding an aggressive fifth rusher or an aggressive movement up front with a blitz scheme and a five-man deal. So we play more man free now than I used to 6, 8, 10 years ago because the RPOs are so prevalent now. That's one of the only ways you can protect yourself on defense when you are playing pattern match and you have, certain things that you have to deal with based on those pattern matches. And now guys are running RPOs. You're losing coverage guys. You're playing Ripley's match and number two goes to the flat and you match it. You just lost a guy in the run fit if they run quarterback runs. So those are things that you got to kind of think about and figure out. Man free is always an easy deal to teach. It's an easy deal for the kids. They actually like playing it way more than they like playing when our kids like playing man and man free more than they like our zone concepts because zone concepts require them to have disciplined eyes and they have to understand how to match patterns based on what occurs and what those patterns are. Man is old school playground football. I got a dude. Don't let my dude catch the ball. So our kids like man, but we have to carry man and man free because of offenses today. All right, so LeBron, I started playing football when I was 6, 1978. Started playing Pop Warner football, played all the way through 4 years of non-scholarship small school football as a receiver, 2 years as a GA in college. So coaching-wise, I got my foot in the door when I was about 23. Moved down to Florida to be an assistant coach and a history social studies teacher. Did that for one season and the head coach left, and I've been a head coach ever since 1999. So foot in the door officially probably when I was 21 or 22, but that door was easier for me to get into because it's the school that I played football at, and I worked for the head coach that recruited me. And the guy that Bob Ricka was my head coach. He recruited me when nobody else really wanted to, and he gave me a chance in college football when a lot of other schools said I was too small and not good enough. And he then not only gave me a chance to play college football, but six games into my college career, and I'm now the guy that they're throwing the ball to predominantly. So I owe the world to Coach Rick as a player and as a coach because he gave me my start in coaching. So easier for me to get my foot in the door because take care, Willie. Always good to see you and hear from you on here. He gave me my start, but I played college football for 4 years there. So it was a little bit easier for me than it was for you probably. But as far as football in general, I started playing when I was 6 and was always into the X's and O's in the scheme of things because I was never the biggest guy. I think I ran pretty well at that time for the level of football I was playing. But running 4.6 as a receiver is not great in the scholarship world, but running 4.6 at the D3 level is actually not bad in 1991. So I excuse me, I ran pretty well for that level. But I was always into X's and O's and schemes because as a smaller player, you've got to find an advantage somewhere because, size is not your deal and overpowering people is not your deal. And understanding offenses and defenses and understanding how to get open based on coverage and, things like that were always my deal in any sport I played. That's how I got an edge on people. So it's been something I've been fascinated for a long time. So coaching for me was just natural. I could be a high school coach, Daniel, the rest of my life. I could take as long as I'm healthy and still love doing it and can relate to kids and I don't become a dinosaur, I could coach till I was in my 70s. Hopefully I can coach another 20, 25 years if possible. I want to coach as long as I can. I don't want to retire until I have to. Physically, if I'm healthy enough, I want to do it as long as I can. I'm probably past the point now with 2 kids that are growing up. I'm probably past the point of taking a college job, unless it was locally here or unless it was for significantly more money than I make now. I can't take a small college job because I'll make the same, if not less money than I make now. So that's not conducive for me. I can't go back and be a GA to hook on somewhere. So, I think I might be a high school coach the rest of my life, and I'm fine with that. Greetings from Germany. I have a team full of beginners. What is the most effective way to teach them the quarters to read and mix in a short time? Do you recommend the folks? Half line stuff in each coverage. Start with board work first and teach them on a whiteboard what quarters is, what the rules are, what two read is, what the rules are, what mix is, what the rules are. When you take it out on the field, do it half field only and work in small pods of, you know, two receivers to a side. Start with tight end, flanker, and a running back, and you've got your outside backer, your inside backer, your corner, and your safety 4-on-3 playing quarters. Run some routes against that and see how your guys match it up. Take that tight end and remove them to number 2. Go 2 open and play palms. 4-on-3, match those routes, and then go to 3-by-1 and put 5 guys in the drill and a back and make the coverage 5-on-4 and pattern match that. That's the best way to go about doing it. I don't know how to get this information to you, but I think I'm doing a Zoom call with all Germany, all coaches from Germany. Sometime next week, I think I'm doing a Zoom call with a guy that invited me to do a coaching clinic for guys in Germany on a Zoom conference call. So I think he's in the Cologne region. I don't know much about Germany. I'm sorry. I don't want to offend anybody, but I am doing a Zoom call in Germany, ironically. So if you can get on that Zoom call, it might help. Thank you. So yeah, that Zoom, it's just ironic you're from Germany and I'm doing a Zoom call in Germany, I think sometime next week. So if you can get on that, I think it would help. But normally I would tell anybody it's kind of chalk, talk, walk. It's you do it on a board first and you teach it by rule on a board, and then you bring them out and you walk through it in smaller pod segments, and then you roll into it, full 7-on-7 coverage wise. That's kind of the way we try to do it. We try to break it down from its grassroots first and teach it on a whiteboard and teach it in a classroom setting, and then we try to go on the field and walk through it, and then we try to do the whole thing. No, I got guys on my staff that weren't college graduates, didn't have a college degree. So no, that's not. I would love to. I'd love to get down to Brazil. I know you guys. A lot of you guys have been mainstays on my channel and on our lives. If it was feasible and monetarily prosperous for me, I would love to go do some play fast work in Brazil. Brazil's always a place I've wanted to see. And if there was ever a way to do play fast stuff in Brazil, I would be more than open if it was economically feasible for me. Again, I have 2 kids now, and when I do things with play fast, the YouTube side will always be free. That'll never change. But when I start talking about clinics and traveling places and doing things, it's got to be economically worthwhile for me to do it. Otherwise, I'm better off just staying on YouTube and doing the things I do here, if that makes sense. But I'd love to go to Brazil. Going back to the dent technique, will the DN keep your shoulders square? Yeah, we would try and stay as square as possible. And then obviously, depending on whether it's a fullback kick or a guard trap, we then want to take that trap kick out block on as square as possible, which is going to change a little bit because of the angle that the trap or kick out block is coming from. You want to be square to that block. So you may be turning your shoulders more to a counter guard kick out scheme than you would to a fullback kick out scheme. But you want to take that thing on nose to nose, right down the middle, absolutely annihilate that block and separate and defeat it and make a play is what you want to do, Coach O'Malley. Brett, thanks for everything you do. If you ever are in the Jacksonville area, let me know. If you can get up and catch a game or practice, that'd be great. Just let me know, and we'll set it up. Well, I think, Dennis, to be honest with you, I think you would get quarterback draw or quarterback runs. I saw Alabama do it to Georgia when 2 years ago, whenever it was, when Tua got hurt and Jalen Hurts came back in the game, and Alabama did it to Georgia. And 2 goes to the flat, and that guy matches it. Now there's 6 left in the box, and the tailback is a lead blocker. And now those backers are spilling the ball to nobody because the guy that was out there matched the route to the flat, and you're depending on the free safety running the alley and making a play. So, any 6-man schemes with quarterback runs are going to leave you a guy short, and that's one of the reasons we don't play a lot of one-high defense. Obviously, Alabama and a lot of the college teams do, and they do a great job doing it, but I just have a hard time supporting runs based on the nature and the rules of the defense. So it's just not something that I choose to do. But I would think if two goes to the flat and that guy's a match player and he starts with outside leverage on two, and I bubble or put two to the flat and he matches it, and I run quarterback ISO, you got six guys in the box and I got six blockers. Who you sending the ball to? That would be my concern. You talking about college kids or professional kids or um, if a high school kid comes over and gets in a high school program, I really don't. I don't care where the kid came from. If he's played football before and he understands football and he's better than the kids I got, he'll play. If you're talking about colleges, you got to somehow get your film or whatever you're doing has got to get out there to college recruiters. If you're talking about professionally, those guys will find you anywhere. So if you're playing, if you want to play NFL football from Brazil and you have some type of film of what you're doing in Brazil and it's good enough and your measurables in the NFL, which is a business proposition, if your measurables are good enough, they'll find you in Brazil. Trust me, they'll find they find anybody. So it's really not as hard as you think. Yeah, Dennis. Like I said, Dennis, I can't tell you verbatim because we don't play it. I'm just telling you things that I've seen and in my head. Um, things that we would try and do. Um, within the read game, if we bubble two and you got to match it, and you've got to be really good with your gap exchange stuff. If your DN plays dive or zone or dart, and our quarterback pulls, you got to have a mic that can gap exchange, and you got to hope that we don't get alignment up to him. Because if the quarterback pulls and the mic or the back that the backer scraping or exchanging, if he can't get there, now the quarterback's running until he hits his head on the goalpost, or your free safety is a great player. I think a lot of those teams in college, to be honest with you, I think they have great free safeties that they rely a hell of a lot on to make a lot of plays that schematically you probably don't want diagrammed that way, but their free safeties are so damn good that they erase a lot of things for like 3 and 4 yard gains that I don't think our free safeties would. Um, their D linemen are asked to do a lot of two gap stuff, and what they do with their kids and the type of players they have are so different than the types of kids we have that I'd be scared to death with teams that would split me wide, take two to the flat, and leave my six in the box against their six blockers. Our bodies aren't big enough. It's hard to two gap. It's hard to, get that Mike or Will to destroy an ISO block and make a tackle. Because one thing, that I know about defensive football that we stress all the time is 6-on-6, six hats on six hats is not good for the defense. We're always talking about where our free hitter is and where we're trying to send the ball. And if you're sending the ball to a guy who's matching somebody in coverage, I just don't know how to fit it because I don't do it. Um, so I wish I could help you more with some of that stuff, but I know that that's what they end up getting. They end up getting a lot of stick draw, a lot of quarterback run with a tailback that's a blocker because it's 6-on-6 in the box, and then they eliminate. They eliminate the extra player by understanding the pattern match and then beating the pattern match. That's why, I think that's one of the reasons you saw Saban go out and hire coordinators that were more spread tempo orientated. Is Nick Saban's smart enough to take the things that he hates defending and then he tries to do them on his team with 5-star players. That's what makes him such a great coach. So we're rolling into about an hour and 20 minutes, guys. So if there's any last minute questions, offense, defense, anything, I don't care what it is. If you got any last minute questions, go ahead and throw them out there so we can get them taken care of. Thank you for listening, Coach O'Malley. I was supposed to be up there in June for a member guest golf tournament, but I probably won't be up there in the near foreseeable future. If I am, it'll be sometime next year. But I can tell you this, Coach O'Malley, I have thoughts about doing a Play Fast clinic on Long Island simply because for me it would be a way to not only venture Play Fast out, but to go back and give back to a place that was part of my upbringing, and all my high school and college football was in that area. So I'd like to do a Play Fast clinic on Long Island if we can get it rolling. Choose 3 players, coaches, etc., just to sit down and talk, past or present. Who would they be? Belichick, Saban, and Peyton Manning or Tom Brady probably would be 3 right off the hoof. If I had to go way back in the day, I might go Darryl Royal or Homer Rice or guys that invented something back in the day. I might want to sit down and talk with Hal Mummy about air raid. Might want to sit down and talk with Mouse Davis about run and shoot. But off the hoof, you're asking me, we're going to play golf in a foursome. I'm going to choose Belichick, Saban, and Peyton Manning first, Tom Brady as an alternate. That's what I would do. If you could somehow send them, I don't know if you guys have Huddle Mark or how you could send them. If you send them in a manner that's not difficult for me to look at, before I start the football season, if I could look at them and fix or help in any way, yeah, I would do that. That's not a problem. No, Rex, that was the only thing I ever did with Coach Tube. And, at that time, that's how I was trying to monetize my stuff. And I got to a point where I just wanted to take out the middleman and do some other things. So I have a Patreon site currently that is $5 a month. I uploaded a video to it yesterday, a Zoom call with a friend of mine, but I haven't been able to put a lot of stuff on the Patreon site recently because I didn't have spring football. I didn't have clips to show. But if you, for $5 a month, if you went on that Patreon site, there's 16, 18 different videos. There's webinars I did on RPOs. There's webinars I did on 3-3 stack. We have clips of guys from our Play Fast clinic talking. I've got other videos with the difference between the Patreon site and YouTube, because it's a subscription site. I will put clips of us playing things on there and talk through them, where I never put clips of us playing things on YouTube because it's a free site. I only put whiteboard material on YouTube. So the Patreon site is $5 a month, which is relatively cheap. And it's got, if you join for the first time, $5 a month for all the information that's on there right now is an absolute steal. The last 2 or 3 months, it hasn't been great because I haven't had the info to put up, but I'm starting to get better with Zoom calls and audio and video files and things like that. So I'm going to be adding more things in the future. But I don't have anything else out there that's for Sarah. I don't have playbooks. I don't have I kind of don't do anything like that on purpose, and I don't want to do anything like that because I don't want it to detract from, if you get a playbook that I do, or if you get something that I do, I don't want you to stop watching YouTube videos because you have the playbook already. So, and I'm not a playbook guy. That's not how I see things. It's not how I learn. So I'm just not that type of guy. But that Coach Tube course is the only thing I have out there other than clinics I've spoke at. I spoke at 4 or 5 Glacier clinics, and I've done a Glacier webinar. So that's the only other stuff that's out there. Hell, I'll come to Chicago. I'd love to come to Chicago. I have some guys I know that are in that area. I've always wanted to go to that area. I would, if it was economically feasible and I had a guy on the ground that could help me with legwork of hotels and things like that, and we had websites that were up and running, I would find a way to do a Play Fast down here, a Play Fast on in the Northeast on Long Island, a Play Fast in the Midwest, and I would love to go out to the West Coast. I would do 4 or 5 Play Fast clinics a year. That's my dream. I'm never gonna, I'm not gonna take on Glacier clinics. I'm not dumb enough to take on Glacier clinics, but I'm smart enough to know that I have what I would consider maybe a cult following of people in different areas of the country that I think I could take my product to places and get 150 to 200 coaches to show up. So I would love to do it, to be honest with you. If we could swing that, Jason, I'm in 100%. What are your thoughts on running push motion with your running back and leaving your sniffer H-back at 6-man? That's all we do, Daniel. 10 personnel, we push 90% of the time. 20 personnel, we push the tailback and use the sniffer in protection. We'll put the sniffer in the route and use the tailback in our 6-man protections. That is all we do that's who we are by nature. So that's 100% everything we do. If you can find another way, Mark, to get me that film, I would love to look at it. Yeah, I think he might coach one day. I think if he gets bored with what's going on, and I think he'd be a great commentator too. And he's a funny guy, so I'd love to see him commentate. But anything else out there, guys, for the night? I appreciate you being on. Again, another great chat where at one point we had 30 guys in here, Brazil and Germany. It never, I am so humbled and freaked out every time we do a YouTube live and guys check in from Brazil or Germany or Mexico or France or England or um, South Africa. It, as humbling as it is, it still to this day just kind of freaks me out that somebody that started doing videos on YouTube can have people that watch in foreign countries. It is flattering, humbling, but it just kind of freaks me out every time somebody says, "Hey, coach, checking in from Brazil, play fast football is big down here," or doing a Zoom call in Germany. It's crazy, and I love it. I'm thankful. I'm blessed, and thank you for you guys that tune in. But it's just still to me kind of freaky. Yeah, spread the word, my man. And if we get it going, I'll come. I'll travel to foreign countries. I want to see the world, anyways, eventually. So, um, Drago, stay safe, my man. Everybody, where you're at, stay safe. Be patient. Do the things they tell you to do. If you got to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you got to be socially distanced, be socially distant. If you got to, like we do right now, if you got to, guys, I currently, when we throw the football, every 4 reps, I sanitize a football, or I use a sanitizer wipe, or I use hand sanitizer with a towel. That's now my job as a head coach. I'm checking kids in, asking questions, highlighting names, and then I'm cleaning footballs. And but that's what I have to do right now, so I do it. So um, I'd love to get out of the country. I'd love to tour different places and bring PlayFast to as many places as possible. And obviously, it's possible because you guys are asking about it. So Daniel Burns, thank you very much for being here tonight. Great questions. Anything else you have, don't ever hesitate. Coach Mac 8740 is my personal Twitter handle. Anybody, if any of you guys follow me and just say, Coach, I was on the YouTube live last night, I would follow back immediately. I follow back 95% of the people, unless you're female or a kid in high school that plays high school football. I'll follow you back. If you say you follow the YouTube channel or you were on a YouTube live, I will 1,000,000% follow you back. And then this way on Twitter, you can send me direct messages, and you don't have to be afraid. If you're afraid to ask a question that you don't want people to see, you can always send me a direct message and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. So I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everything you do for me. Appreciate everything you do for PlayFast. We will definitely do another one next week. All right. And we'll probably talk offense next week since we talked a bunch of defense tonight. So stay safe out there. Be patient. We'll get back to normal soon. And I will see you the next time we do it. Thank you so much, guys. See you next time.